So, thank you. So I'm Brian Holliday, Managing Director of the Siemens Digital Factory business, but here today on behalf of the Made Smarter team, for which I intend to read cover to cover the review for you with a quick précis of some of its findings and recommendations. But I think the format indeed today is one of top tips for, or 7 top tips in 7 minutes. And my intention was just to cover briefly the Made Smarter, the findings of the Made Smarter review, and give you a sense of why 200 companies got together to think about exactly this. Let me start with tip number 1, which is to perhaps be digitally curious. And the reason I say that is there's a revolution underway. It's the 4th industrial revolution. The first, of course, was mechanisation in the late 1700s. The second, electrification, and the electrification or division of labour, in the early 1840s saw another significant productivity leap. It's argued that, of course, we missed out a little bit on the 3rd industrial revolution, which was the introduction of computer-based control and so on, and we lost our standing a little bit there. But now the 4th industrial revolution is underway, and the question was, could we be a global leader in industrial digital technologies by 2030? So what's driving that? And top tip number 2 is perhaps to get connected to the Internet of Things, and not just that, but the industrial Internet of Things. So of course it's being driven by these things. It's the growth in connectivity and capability of computing devices. Gordon Moore's prediction in 1965 that transistor density would double. Well, of course, what that means today is that in 15 years' time, we'll be looking at devices that are 1,000 times more capable than the devices we're carrying around today. So you haven't got to think too far into the future to appreciate the computing capability that we'll have access to in industry. That and also connectivity. So the Internet of Things today, 5 million new devices per day being connected to it, with 20 billion devices estimated by 2021. Now the vast majority of those are machine-to-machine devices. It's the industrial Internet of Things that's growing, and that's why the Industrial Digitalisation Review that became the Made Smarter Review really centred in on what's the opportunity for the UK in this. So my 3rd top tip for you is to read the report. It's downloadable as a PDF, of course, but in essence it found that there are 3 big challenges with where we find ourselves: in adoption, in innovation, and in leadership. And on the adoption side, this was very much thinking about the need for a national adoption programme to upskill workers, arguably up to 1 million workers currently in industry today, and also for us to have policy instruments that would help stimulate the sort of investment that's left us behind to date. On the innovation side, the report found that we need to better leverage some of our innovation assets, like the catapults and so on. And finally, on leadership, the report finds that we need a commission. We actually need a body that would help coordinate some of the activities of a revitalised manufacturing sector based on some of these new technologies and capabilities. So my 4th tip is assess the benefits for you. The report found, of course, that there are significant benefits to the economy if we undertake the findings of the review, namely that we could, over 10 years, see a £455 billion boost to GDP. The manufacturing sector itself could see a net gain, a conservative net gain, I would argue, of 175,000 new jobs. And indeed, we could see industrial productivity significantly boosted, arguably over 20%. And again, I see that as conservative. So in terms of benefits to you, to your company, well, what about a 4th industrial revolution of your own? And that's the campaign headline behind the proposed adoption campaign, the funding that's needed for marketing to go and do that. So what would I recommend? A top tip number 5, go and visit a catapult. Go and have a look at one of the high-value manufacturing catapults that today are bringing to life some of these industrial digital technologies to get a sense of how that innovation can start to impact your company as well. What I would say, top tip number 6, you have to do that in conjunction with a good, solid skills plan. That sense that actually picking these technologies up and using them is all about great vocationally trained people who've got an eye to the future on some of these technologies and how they are advancing. And that's certainly, for me as Siemens, the way that we're viewing the opportunity. Of course, we're still making investment decisions based on quality, cost, delivery, safety in all of our factories, 15 of which are here in the UK. But of course, we're increasingly looking at that with an eye to the digital future, the technologies that will help make us more productive and more competitive, which is very much the findings of the report. So my seventh and final top tip is if you can see what the opportunity is in this as well, is perhaps to try and take some time to lobby your government affairs colleagues, your business and government facing organisations like EEF to get more engaged in exactly this topic and see if you can't contribute a little bit to Britain's fourth industrial revolution. Thank you.